The wind shrieked through the trees like a feral animal, rattling the tin roof of the small repair garage that sat alone on the edge of Pine Brook, a forgotten town tucked deep in the Colorado mountains. Snow was falling sideways now, thick and blinding, coating the ground in a dense white blanket that muffled everything except the occasional groan of wind-stressed wood. Inside the garage's adjacent cabin, Cole Jensen stood by the wood-burning stove, rubbing his hands together for warmth. His 6-year-old daughter, Ellie, was asleep on the pull-out couch under a handmade quilt, her cheeks still pink from laughing at his bedtime story an hour ago. The power had gone out an hour before, but the cabin was still warm, the fire flickering shadows across the walls. Cole sipped a lukewarm mug of instant coffee, staring through the foggy window toward the road. Snowplows wouldn't reach them until morning. He had accepted that years ago. You learned to survive out here. You didn't call for help unless it was serious. Then, his cell phone vibrated on the countertop, screen glowing with a number he didn't recognize. He hesitated. Most calls this late were either wrong numbers or bad news. He picked it up anyway. Hello? The voice on the other end was shaky, breathless. A woman. I'm so sorry to call you this late. I got your number from a mechanic in town. My camper broke down just off Highway 9 near Red Hollow Trail. The engine won't start, the heater's failing, and I don't know what to do. Cole's brows furrowed. Red Hollow Trail? That was 10 miles into the forest. Almost no one used it in winter. You're alone? He asked. Yes. I was trying to make it to the next town before the storm got worse, but it's bad out here. I can't even open the door. The snow's already piling up. Cole glanced at Ellie, her breathing steady beneath the blanket. He looked outside again. Wind screamed past the windows. I have a daughter, he said cautiously. She's asleep. I can't leave her here alone. A pause. Then the woman spoke again, softer this time, laced with fear. Please, I wouldn't call if it wasn't serious. I don't even know who else to ask. I'm freezing. He closed his eyes, exhaling through his nose. Everything in him said no. Too risky, too much unknown, but something in her voice stuck with him, the kind of desperation you didn't fake. Where exactly are you? He asked at last. She rattled off coordinates and a vague landmark. He wrote them on the back of a junk mail envelope. I'll need 20 minutes to drop my daughter with a neighbor, he said. Sit tight. Keep every blanket you can find wrapped around you. I will. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking. 25 minutes later, Cole was back on the road in his old pickup, headlights struggling against the snow. Ellie was safe at the welder's farm down the hill. Neighbors who never asked questions just nodded and said, "We'll keep her warm." His truck fishtailed twice on the icy road, but he kept driving. The forest thickened, the storm worse. Finally, his lights caught the glint of metal. A silver camper, half buried in snow, tucked just off the trail. Cole parked, grabbed a flashlight, and stomped toward the door. He banged on the side. Hello? The door creaked open. A woman stood there, wrapped in 2 coats and a tattered scarf, cheeks raw from cold. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Cole? She asked. That's me, he nodded. Let's get you out of here before your blood freezes. Sierra Blake hadn't realized how close she was to hypothermia until she stepped into the warmth of Cole's truck. The heater barely worked, but compared to the freezing metal coffin she'd been holed up in for the past 5 hours, it felt like summer. Her fingers stung as they thawed. She cradled the thermos Cole handed her, lukewarm coffee, bitter and thin, but heaven nonetheless. Thanks, she murmured, her voice hoarse. Cole didn't say much. He drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes scanning the winding road like it might suddenly disappear. His jaw was tight. Focused. He didn't seem angry, but he definitely wasn't trying to make conversation. The tea might. That was fine with her. She didn't want to talk either. When they reached the garage, he helped her inside the cabin, where the fire still glowed red in the stove. Blankets waited on the armchair. Sierra sank into them with a sigh, barely holding back the tears of relief. She hadn't cried in months, not even when the tabloids published the story, or when her board voted to force her into a, quote, sabbatical. But now, in this stranger's quiet, firelit cabin, she suddenly felt everything. I can sleep on the floor, she offered, not looking up. Or the truck. I don't want to take your daughter's space. She's at the neighbor's tonight, Cole said gruffly, setting a kettle over the flame. You'll take the couch. Sierra glanced at him for the first time. His face was weathered but not unkind. Brown eyes, tired but watchful. He had the look of someone who had survived more than most and stopped pretending it hadn't hurt. Thank you, she said again, quieter this time. He shrugged. You picked a hell of a week to get lost in the mountains. I wasn't lost, she said without thinking, his eyebrow arched. You just happened to break down in a camper on an unmarked forest road in a snowstorm? She stiffened. I just wanted to be alone. Cole didn't press. He just nodded slowly, poured her a mug of hot water with lemon, and moved to the workbench to tinker with something under a lantern. Sierra sipped her drink in silence, watching him. He didn't ask questions, didn't recognize her apparently. That was good. That was the whole point of getting away from LA. No cameras, no headlines, no whispered boardroom gossip. Just cold, quiet, and this man who had shown up when no one else had. At some point, exhaustion won. She curled up under the quilt and drifted to sleep with the sound of Cole sharpening tools and the fire crackling soft in the dark. The storm rolled on through the night. Outside, snow blanketed the forest in an eerie silence. Inside the cabin, the fire in the stove crackled low, casting a soft amber glow across the walls. Sierra stirred under the thick quilt on the couch, her body stiff but warmer than it had been in days. Her eyes opened to a faint creaking, someone moving across the cabin floor. Cole stood near the window, one hand resting on the sill, his silhouette outlined by the moonlight bouncing off the snow. He didn't notice she was awake until she sat up. Can't sleep? She asked, voice husky. He turned slightly, giving a half shrug. Storm's loud. Sierra nodded, pulling the blanket tighter around her. You sleep much, normally? Not really. He walked over, placed another log in the stove. Too many things in my head. She watched the flames catch. I know the feeling. They were quiet for a moment. The kind of silence that wasn't awkward, just full. Cole finally sat down across from her. His eyes didn't pry, but they held a question. One she knew he wouldn't ask out loud. You're not from around here, he said simply. Sierra gave a small smile. That obvious? You said you wanted to be alone. People who come here for that usually have something chasing them. She looked down at her hands. The tremble in her fingers, more than just cold. What if I told you I was running from myself? He didn't flinch. You wouldn't be the first. She took a slow breath. My name is Sierra Blake. The name didn't register on his face. Guessing that doesn't mean much to you? Nope. Should it? She let out a breath of a laugh, relieved. Not if you don't read the business section. Cole leaned back. Let me guess. Ex-executive? Former tech giant? Startup burnout? Sierra gave him a look. Close. Financial firm. LA-based. Blake Ventures. His brow furrowed. Wait. Blake as in, like the billboard ads? The ones on every airport wall in the country? Guilty, she muttered. Or I used to be. He stared at her a moment longer, then said, You're not what I expected. She smirked, though there was no real humor in it. No one ever sees past the name. That's why I left. After the fallout, after the vote. God, the press had a field day. I just wanted to be somewhere no one cared about Blake Ventures. Somewhere I could be just. Sierra. Cole nodded, absorbing her words without judgment. Well, I don't care about your last name, but I do care if you're still driving around in that tin can with busted brakes. She laughed softly, surprising herself. That obvious, huh? I'll take a look at it in the morning. A long pause settled between them. The firelight danced gently across their faces. You have a daughter? Sierra asked. Cole's expression shifted instantly. Softer, but also heavier. Yeah, Ellie, 6 years old. Smarter than me already. She's lucky to have you." He didn't answer right away. "I try. Her mom passed a while back. Complications during childbirth. I was working high-rise projects in Denver at the time. Big money. Big clients. After she died, I couldn't go back. Didn't want to build things that didn't matter." Sierra's fingers tightened around her mug. "So you came here? Bought this old garage and fixed it up. Enough work rolls through to keep us fed. It's quiet. That's all I need." The two of them sat in silence, their scars laid gently on the table between them. Not to be examined, but simply acknowledged. "You gave everything up for her," Sierra said softly. "I didn't see it that way," Cole replied. "I just chose her over everything else." She looked at him, really looked at him. This man who wore sorrow like a jacket but still showed up in a storm for a stranger. "Thank you," she said, "for showing up." He gave a small nod. "Don't make a habit of roof camping during blizzards, and we'll call it even." She chuckled, and this time the warmth reached her eyes. The storm passed in the early morning hours, leaving behind a quiet world wrapped in thick snow. The sky turned from charcoal to soft gray, and the first weak rays of sun reflected off the blanket of white like glass. Birds didn't sing. The trees barely stirred. Even the wind seemed exhausted. Cole was already outside, bundled in a heavy coat, boots crunching through the snow as he inspected Sierra's camper. He had her parked inside the garage now, the busted starter motor pulled apart on the workbench. She watched him through the cabin window, steam from her tea curling up into the morning light. He was efficient, quiet, focused. There was no small talk between them that morning. Just nods, brief glances, and the occasional muttered, "Hand me that wrench," or "This part's shot." But something had shifted. Last night, Sierra had let her real name slip. And Cole hadn't reacted the way most people did. He didn't ask about her net worth or her media scandals. He didn't seem to care that she had once run a billion-dollar company or appeared on the cover of Fortune, and that scared her more than anything. Because it meant this man, this grounded, stubborn, kind man, wasn't drawn to the myth of Sierra Blake. He was drawn to her. Around mid-morning, Cole stepped back from the engine with grease-stained hands and an irritated sigh. "I can patch it together enough to get you into town, but if you're thinking about going any farther in that thing, I wouldn't recommend it." Sierra gave a small smile. "Guess I'll have to stick around a little longer then." Cole didn't respond, not with words, but something in his eyes shifted. Uneasy. She noticed. Later that day, while Cole went to pick up Ellie from the welders, Sierra stayed behind to straighten the cabin. She wiped the counters, folded the blankets, even swept the floor. When she reached for a fresh towel in the cabinet, a small box fell from the shelf, an old tin with faded lettering. Paper spilled out. She froze. Inside were sketches, blueprints, notes in tight, clean handwriting, hand-drawn designs for small homes, community buildings, shelters, all with C. Jensen preliminary concept printed in the corner. Sierra's breath caught. She tucked everything back with care. But the idea stayed with her. Burning. Cole came back with Ellie, who lit up the moment she saw Sierra. "Miss Sierra, you're still here!" "I am," Sierra said with a gentle smile, kneeling to Ellie's level. "Someone had to make sure your dad didn't blow up the camper." Ellie giggled, running to show her a snow globe she'd gotten from the neighbors. Cole entered behind her, quieter than usual. That evening, after Ellie had fallen asleep, curled up with a book in the armchair, Sierra lingered by the dining table while Cole gathered tools. Her voice was soft but steady. "I saw your designs," she said. Cole stopped. "I didn't mean to snoop. They fell out of a box when I was grabbing a towel. But they're incredible." He said nothing, just tightened his grip on a screwdriver. "You were going to build something that mattered," she continued. "Weren't you?" "I was," he said finally. "Back before everything. They're not just buildings. You designed homes for people who need them." He turned to face her now. "Why are you really here, Sierra?" She paused, then exhaled. "My board forced me out after a scandal involving my CFO. It wasn't mine to carry, but I took the fall. And I let them. Because I was tired. I built something big, but it was empty. And I didn't want to live inside that machine anymore. She met his gaze. I wanted to feel real again. The air between them felt thinner. He stared at her, unreadable. And now you're here, he said, helping with dishes, fixing blankets, talking about real. But the whole time you left out the truth. I wasn't hiding who I am, she whispered. I was trying to find out if I'm still someone without it. Cole looked at her for a long, long moment, then he turned away. Good night, Sierra, he said, his voice flat. And just like that, the warmth of the fire didn't reach the space between them anymore. The next morning dawned darker than the one before. Low clouds rolled over the mountains like thick smoke, and the air had that strange electric stillness that warned locals of what was coming. Another storm. A worse one. Inside the cabin, Cole moved stiffly through the kitchen, pouring cereal for Ellie and barely glancing at Sierra, who sat silently at the small table, hands wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee. He hadn't said more than a few words since the night before. The awkward weight of unspoken disappointment hung thick in the air. Sierra had considered leaving, quietly, but her camper still wasn't road ready, and if she was being honest with herself, she didn't want to go. Not yet. Ellie, however, was oblivious. She chatted brightly about a dream she'd had, how she wanted to build a snow fort later, and how Sierra made better tea than Daddy ever did. I think Miss Sierra should stay forever, she said cheerfully, mouth full of cereal. Cole's eyes flinched at that, but he didn't say anything. He just reached for his jacket. I need to head to the workshop. Storm's coming. Gotta tarp some equipment before it hits. Can I help? Ellie asked, already hopping off her chair. Not today, Bug. Too cold. Stay inside. Read or color. I'll keep her busy, Sierra offered gently. Cole nodded, but didn't meet her eyes. Then he was gone. Hours passed. The wind picked up, howling through the pines like an angry spirit. Snow began to fall again. Thicker this time, faster. Sierra made lunch, helped Ellie build a blanket fort in the living room, and even played a few songs on the out-of-tune piano in the corner. Ellie loved every second of it. But around 3 p.m., Sierra turned away for just a moment, just long enough to hang up her coat in the hallway, and Ellie was gone. At first, she thought the girl was hiding. Part of a game. But after 10 minutes of searching, calling her name, checking every room and under every blanket, panic set in. The front door was open, just a crack. A trail of tiny boot prints led into the trees behind the garage, already fading under fresh snow. Sierra grabbed her coat, scarf, and boots in seconds. The storm was intensifying, visibility down to 20 feet, wind sharp and biting. She followed the tracks as long as she could, calling Ellie's name into the screaming wind. Nothing. Then, just as she crested a small hill near the old church ruins at the edge of the forest, she heard it. A soft cry, then a voice, high and terrified. Miss Sierra? Sierra sprinted through the snow. Ellie sat curled beneath the broken arch of the old church wall, huddled under her yellow raincoat, crying. Sierra dropped to her knees and pulled her into her arms. Oh my God, Ellie, why? Why did you run? I wanted to find you, Ellie sobbed. You were sad, Daddy was mad. I thought you'd leave. Sierra hugged her tighter, tears freezing to her lashes. I would never leave without saying goodbye, sweet girl. Never. Just then, headlights broke through the trees. Cole's truck. He ran toward them, breath-catching when he saw Ellie safe in Sierra's arms. Ellie! He choked out. She ran to him, Sierra helping her over the snowdrift. Cole scooped her up, holding her like he'd never let go. I'm sorry, Daddy, she whispered. He kissed her temple over and over. You scared me half to death, baby. Never do that again. Then his eyes rose to Sierra, wet, red, raw from the cold. You found her, he said, stunned. I followed her prints. Thank God the snow hadn't buried them yet. He stared at her. You saved her. Sierra shook her head. She saved me first. They stood there for a long moment, storm raging around them, holding the child between them. And something between them, fragile, fractured, clicked back into place. Not perfectly, but enough. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving behind a crystalline silence. The trees glistened with frost, and the first sunlight in days poured through the cabin windows like honey. Inside, The warmth of the fire was matched only by the quiet peace that had returned. Ellie slept, curled up on the couch beneath a quilt, her cheeks flushed from the night's ordeal but safe, whole. Cole stood at the stove, pouring boiling water over coffee grounds, his movements slow and thoughtful. Sierra leaned against the doorframe of the kitchen, a blanket draped over her shoulders. Her eyes were still rimmed red, but this morning she looked steadier, anchored. He handed her a mug without a word. "Thanks," she said, fingers brushing his, "for not shutting the door on me." "I almost did," he admitted, voice low. "But then you walked into a blizzard for my daughter." She looked at him gently. "That's the thing about storms. They strip everything down until all that's left is what matters." Cole sipped his coffee and stared into the fire. "So, now what?" Sierra hesitated. Then she stepped over to the table where her backpack sat. She pulled out a thin folder and placed it in front of him. "This?" He raised an eyebrow. "I've been working on it quietly for the last year," she said. "After everything fell apart, I realized I'd never built anything that lasted. Not really. Just money machines and corporate facades." She opened the folder. Inside were plans, simple, elegant blueprints for small homes, clustered communities, green spaces, and resource centers. "It's called the Haven Project. I want to start it here, in this town, with real people." He flipped through the pages. Budget sheets, land options, concept designs. His name penciled in under lead structural designer. He looked up slowly. "You want me to run this?" "I want to build it with you," she said softly. "Because you've been designing homes for broken people long before I ever showed up. You just didn't have the backing." Cole stared at her. His voice, when it came, was hoarse. "Why me?" "Because you never stopped building, even when the world gave you every reason to quit." He swallowed hard. "This is a lot." "I know. That's why it's real." He sat down, running a hand over the blueprints. The lines were clean, hopeful, just like the ones he used to dream of drawing back in Denver before everything changed. "I thought I'd buried this part of myself," he whispered. "Buried it with her." Sierra knelt beside him. "Maybe it's time to build again." For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he reached across the folder and took her hand. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's build something that lasts." Spring came early to Pinebrook. The snow melted into rushing creeks, and the trees unfurled pale green leaves as if waking from a long sleep. Birds returned to the hills, children's laughter echoed in the meadows, and the once quiet town began to buzz again, but this time with hope. And at the center of it all stood the beginnings of something new, the Haven Project. Rows of small, thoughtfully designed homes rose one by one on the edge of town, each with porches wide enough for rocking chairs, windows deep enough for sunlight, and gardens just waiting to be loved. On one crisp morning, Cole Jensen stood beneath a white canopy, adjusting the cuffs of a borrowed shirt and straightening his tie. He was never one for speeches or crowds, but today wasn't about comfort. It was about completion. Wakanagin. Across the lawn, Sierra Blake moved through the crowd with graceful ease, dressed in soft ivory linen, clipboard in hand, her hair swept back by the breeze. She no longer wore the armor of corporate polish. She didn't need it. Here, she was known not for her name, but for her heart. And somewhere near the front, in a sky-blue dress dotted with hand-sewn daisies, little Ellie waved wildly from her seat, missing her 2 front teeth and beaming with pride. "Daddy, you look weird in a tie," she shouted as the audience chuckled. Cole smiled, shaking his head. "Thanks for that, sweetheart." Sierra stepped up to the podium, sunlight warming her face. Her voice was clear and strong, but full of quiet emotion. "A year ago," she began, "I was lost. I had built an empire, but I had no home, no peace. And then a storm forced me off the road, literally and figuratively. What I found wasn't just shelter. I found kindness. I found a man who didn't care who I was, only whether I was okay. And I found a little girl who reminded me that love doesn't ask for credentials. It just shows up." She looked out across the audience, then directly at Cole and Ellie. "Today, we open the doors of these homes. But the truth is, they've already been filled with laughter, with second chances, with community. and with something I never thought I'd have again: family. As the crowd stood in applause, Cole joined her at the podium, Ellie tugging his sleeve. "Now?" she whispered excitedly. "Now," he said. Cole pulled a small box from his pocket. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. He simply turned to Sierra, took both her hands, and spoke softly, for her and for Ellie, more than for the crowd. "Sierra, I never thought I'd start over. I thought I was finished. But you helped me build again. Not just homes, a life. For me, for Ellie, for us. So if you'll have me, I want to keep building it with you. One brick, one day, one laugh at a time." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, set with a smooth stone, milky, pale, and round. "She found it," Cole said, nodding toward Ellie. "The night you stayed with us. Said it looked like you, quiet, bright, and special." Sierra's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, unable to speak. Then finally, "Yes." Ellie let out a victorious cheer. "I told you she'd say yes." They laughed through tears. Cole kissed Sierra gently, arms wrapping around her like a promise. Ellie hugged them both, the three of them tangled in joy. Later that evening, when the celebration had faded into warmth and candlelight, they walked, hand in hand, to the first completed home on the block. A white ribbon stretched across the front porch, gently fluttering in the breeze. Cole looked at them both. "You ready?" Sierra nodded. Ellie grinned. "Let's go home." Together, they cut the ribbon and stepped through the door, not just into a house, but into everything they had built. Trust, healing, love. A place that finally felt like forever. If this story moved you, reminded you that healing is real, or renewed your belief in second chances, we invite you to subscribe to Healing Stories. Here, we share real-life journeys of strength, love, and hope. Stories that speak straight to the soul. Thank you for being here. And always remember, no matter how far you fall, there's always a way back to the light. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know.